Her hobbies are reading, as well as relaxing and enjoying her life.
Thank you, Ntare.
And I have to say, this is in no particular order. Dr. Obadele Kambon, who is a linguist and I believe a professor of linguistics at the University of Ghana. And just a brief background to his story, he lived in Chicago and experienced some of the more perhaps negative sides. We all see in the news and the media how life can be for brothers in the diaspora. And he certainly was at the raw end of that. I think it was 2008, he had a not so nice experience where effectively he was set up, framed by the legal system, and eventually exonerated, and he decided he had enough of living as a second-class citizen, moved to Ghana, met his wife. I believe now you have 3 children. Okay. They are Ghanaian now, so that's why I made that confusion. And 2009 started his doctorate in linguistics at the University of Ghana, where he now teaches. I understand he speaks Twi, Yoruba, is proficient in Swahili, and other languages as well. Those are the ones I could remember. So welcome. So, last but by no means least, I'd like to introduce Dr. Darkwah. I had the pleasure of meeting her very briefly online earlier in the week, and her background is effectively in sociology, social studies. You're the head of sociology, former head of sociology department of the University of Ghana. She's dedicated at least 20 years of her life to teaching the next generation through the University of Ghana and other initiatives. She has a particular interest in the impact of migration and politics and war on women and the development of the socio-economics and the impact of women. So I think we should give them all a big round of applause. So the topic today is essentially freedom. And we just want to pose some open questions initially to get us warmed up and perhaps get a bit of a discussion going amongst the panel, and then eventually open up to you, the wonderful audience, to have your questions and share your thoughts and comments also. So firstly, I'd like to ask Dr. Darkwah, what to you in this age that we live in, what does freedom truly mean for us as a people? I know it's quite a broad question, but I think I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. So, when I think freedom, I think the first thing that comes for me is being unburdened, not having burdens, not having the weight of our history sort of sitting on our backs. And so for me, what freedom means in this generation is to be able to lift who we are up and not feel bent down and pushed down and sort of, hampered from being who we truly could be because of our past. That's what, in summary, I'll call freedom.
And there's the same question effectively to you, please.
So when we look at freedom, and matter of fact, before I get started, I always like to try to make any talk that I'm a part of interactive. So when I say emancipation, I want those of you in the audience to say free black nation. Emancipation? Free black nation. And then when I say emancipation, I want you to say free African nation. Emancipation? Free African nation. Emancipation? Free black nation. Emancipation? Free African nation. Very good. That way people can't fall asleep as I'm talking, because you never know when I'll call on you. When we look at freedom, we can look at it from multiple perspectives and angles, but essentially I look at it as freedom to, and then also freedom from. When we say freedom to, it's the idea of freedom to do what it is that you want to do, freedom to engage in this activity, that activity, but then the other side is now freedom from. Now, what we have to look at is whenever we are told about freedom, we have to think about, is it freedom to do something that's in our own interest, or is it freedom to do something that is in the interest of those who are actually manipulating what our choices are going to be? So for example, you could say, oh, now I have freedom to go to Pizza Hut. I have freedom to go to KFC. I have freedom to, go to Domino's, to all these different things. But then we have to start to ask who benefits. So if you want to understand any problem, don't look at who suffers from the problem, look at who benefits from the problem. So those who are benefiting economically, those who are going to benefit when your health starts to, go down because you're doing things and eating things that are going to cause heart disease and diabetes and high blood pressure and all these other things. They are fine with you having freedom if it's freedom to do something that's not in your own interest. But what they tend to have a problem with is when you try to assert freedom from their hegemony, freedom from their manipulation, freedom from coercion, freedom from their influence, freedom from the concept that they have competent and legitimate authority. So I think that when we're looking at freedom, we can look at it from both of those. Are we talking about freedom to do something in our own interest, or is it freedom to be manipulated in ways that actually benefit those who control our choices? So I'll pause on that one because I know we are on the panel. Emancipation? Emancipation?
My idea of freedom is also multifaceted. So I'm thinking of freedom in terms of being a black person. So I'm thinking of freedom in terms of freedom from racial discrimination, freedom from the history of colonialism and then enslavement, freedom to live and exist as a black person no matter which part of the world we are in. And for us in this part of the world, sometimes we tend to forget how difficult it is to just exist as a black person. So for me, to define freedom is to think about the holistic freedom for black people to just exist no matter where in the world they are, just as black people, free to worship whatever their concept of a religious being is, or not to worship. Freedom to, economic freedom, for instance, to build our economy and our financial freedom within a black concept that's free of all the colonial baggage. So I'm thinking freedom as a black people, like Dr. Kambon said, free Africa, free black nations. So that's my idea of freedom.
Thank you very much. Dr. Darkwah, particularly from the perspective of, I think freedom is not always issued in equal measure, let's say, between men and women. We've developed, we've gained emancipation, but there's still disparities and inequalities perhaps between the men in the community and the women in the community. And I know this is a particular area of focus. We have a saying in Jamaica that one hand can't clap. And if you only have, one side of the people enjoying those freedoms, then collectively your ability to grow is adversely impacted. So in your studies, can you kind of share perhaps some of your insights into how that has shaped the Ghana situation? Because I know that for you is a particular area of interest.
Because I think that when you think about the relationships between men and women, gender relations in Ghana now, it's a combination of the burdens of colonialism and the burdens of religion, as well as who we used to be at some point in time, right? So it manifests in many sort of contradictory ways. If you take the world of work, for example, we've had a very long history of women working, not just in Ghana, Africa. There are records from the 1600s that make it very clear that women worked for an income. So it wasn't just something that they did at home in the reproductive sphere only. They also had productive activities that earned them income. But the colonial right, was one that conceptualized women as not working, not earning an income. So in Ghana, when the formal sector was set up by the British, women entered last. And when you entered the formal sector, you couldn't be married and work. So many of us with mothers, grandmothers in their 80s and 90s, you know the story that she may have been a nurse, she may have been a teacher, but when she started to work and then got married, she became a baker, she became a hairdresser, because she couldn't be in the workforce and be married, right? It was the Nkrumah regime that began to change those kinds of things. So you can sort of date Ghanaian women's work in the formal sector based on how old are you and what kinds of laws existed to make it possible for you to work or not to work. You see today that that is also reflected in 30, 40, 50 years of women in different years, but we are located at the lower levels of many things. So at the University of Ghana, if you take professorships, only 12% of the professors are women. So things look very different now. We have a female vice chancellor, we have a female chancellor, and so on. But if you actually start to pay attention to where are people located on there, you find that many of us are lower level. We take for granted that we are here because some woman got up and got the tomatoes from the farm to the market. Another woman bought it and got it to the house to make the food that we eat, right? But they get paid so little and are not able to really make ends meet on that kind of income. So when we talk about economic freedoms, so many of them work very hard but have very little to show in return. But the other thing to keep in mind is that while you can compare how little they make vis-a-vis the men, for us as black people, our location in the global south, as for lack of a better word, third world citizens, fourth world citizens, means that my oppressions as a female are tied to the oppressions of the black men that I live with. And these oppressions are economic oppressions linked to the global. So when Obadele is talking about freedom to make your choices, are you going to eat at a McDonald's? Are you going to eat at a KFC? Or are you going to eat at JamRock instead? And what implications do that have for your health, but also for the well-being of the larger black populations? The kinds of decisions we are able to make or not make is not only tied to our relationships with the men in our families, it's tied to our locations as men and women, blacks in the global south. So you can't talk of African women's freedoms or black women's freedoms without tying it to black men's freedom. It's other parts of the world might have that luxury, we don't.
Thank you. Ntare, I believe you have some questions.
So my first question is for Madame Aekua Bobson. Do you believe that emancipation is the same as independence? If not, why?
Well, historically, at least from what I know, emancipation is quite different from independence, and this is because when I think about emancipation, and I stand to be corrected, but when I think about emancipation, I'm thinking emancipation from enslavement. So, for instance, Jamaica and most of the black diaspora has gone through a long history of enslavement, and emancipation usually has to do with being emancipated from the bondage of enslavement. That's opposed to independence, which is more of a national thing. And in some cases that coincide. So if we take Jamaica, for instance, there's emancipation from enslavement, but Jamaica is also, or was also, a British colony. So there's also the independence from the colonial masters. Whereas when you come to countries like Ghana, we've only had independence. And so there's a peculiar history that comes with the two terms, and they coincide in places like the Caribbean and other Caribbean or diasporan countries.
Emancipation?
Free Black Nation.
I see people are sleeping on the job. Emancipation?
Free Black Nation.
Emancipation? Emancipation? Very good. So, as your background is in linguistics, so I'll go a little bit into the etymology. So when we say emancipation, it comes, the E part of it comes from ex, to go out of, and then the man comes from manus, hand, and then the cipation comes from capare, which is grasp, so you're coming out of the grasp of the hand. And this was used in Rome in order to describe a situation where an enslaved person or a child or a wife was allowed out of legal authority of the man. Because at that point in time, for that society, a non-African society, the idea, and I know Dr. Darkwah spoke about this briefly, the idea was that the woman was property, that the children were property, that the slaves were property, whatever. But if you allow them to go out of the grasp of your hand, this is now emancipation. Then we look at independence. Again, in is the negator in there, and then dependence. So what is dependence? It means to depend on someone for your food, for your shelter, for your clothing. But independence means that you are no longer going to depend on someone for that. Now, I want to juxtapose that as Dr. Darkwah did in going back in time. At the time that in Rome, the woman was considered to be property, you have the very first, actually a few thousand years before Rome even existed, you had the very first female ruler in the history of the entire planet Earth of a nation state. That was Sat Ra Sobek Neferu Ra, and that's in classical Kemet. For those who don't know, Kemet is what people are referring to as Egypt nowadays, but it's very important we use the term Kemet because Kemet means land of the black people. It means the exact same thing as Abibimain. It means the exact same thing in Yoruba as Ila Adulawo. It means the exact same thing as in the Bambara language, Bamanakan, as Farafina. It means the exact same thing that in Wolof we'll say Reo Nit Kunyul. It means the exact same thing as in Kikongo we'll say Nsia Bandombe. So our concept of women was vastly different. You also have probably the most prominent female ruler, Satra Hatshepsut, who was known for leading multiple expeditions, trading and commerce expeditions to Punt to bring back frankincense, myrrh, spices, so forth and so on. So at the time that women in Eurasia were seen as things and seen as property, women were actually running the entire state apparatus and making choices and doing things of that nature. But even beyond that, even conceptually, if we look at in our own cosmology, we have the concept that the creator has both feminine and masculine aspects, because we know that to create life, it requires both female and male. So if this is the order now as it was at the beginning, it means that at the beginning that must have also pertained. So in classical Kemet, you would have the concept of Amen, Amenet, where Amen is masculine and then Amenet is feminine. Nun, Naunet, Kekeket, Hehehet. But then even when we come to contemporary Ghana, you have the same thing where you have Arade, Nyonkopong. Nowadays, when I say Arade, people think about an imaginary white boy on a stick. I say that's not what Arade is. Arade is actually symbolized by a triangle, and I have a gold weight here that if I can pull it out, I'll show you. But Arade, as the triangle, represents the womb, and that's the feminine aspect of the creator. Whereas Nyonkopong is represented by a spiral, and that represents the masculine aspect of the creator. But then you have a similar concept among the Ga people, where they'll have Ata, Na, Nyombo, where Ata is the father, Na is the mother, and then Nyombo is the creator. That's my keys, not my gold weight. But then you have the same thing among the Bay speakers, where they would have, I'll bring it out when I'm able to situate myself because I'm still talking. Emancipation!
Free Black Nation.
So also the concept is that masculine and feminine is about complementary balance, whereas the Eurasian concept is you have this idea of Chronos, and then Chronos is going to be killed by Hera because male and female must be at war, and then they're going to rebel and then bring, Zeus into power, and then Zeus is going to go and rape women and then those ones are trying to get back. So that's their concept, is one thing is good, the opposite is evil, and they must always be in conflict. You find this in the idea that man's downfall is due to a woman in this whole Garden of Eden story. Like, this is built into their worldview, but their worldview is not a universal worldview. So if we are going to truly be emancipated, we have to come out of the grasp of even their conception of reality. We have to not be dependent on their conception of reality that's embedded in their religion, embedded in their political systems. There is a book called Up From Slavery. And the problem with that book is that if you think that the beginning of your history started as slavery, everything after that looks like progress. If you think that the beginning of your history began with colonization, then everything after that looks like progress. But if you knew that in prior times, and I had my daughter read a book called Black Women in Antiquity, where she was able to read about Nana Amani-Renas, who was able to stop the Roman advance. At that time, the Roman Empire was conquering everyone, but when they got to Ethiopia, they had to stop and turn back, because she, on elephant back, drove them back and made them shake in their boots, and then cut the head off the statue and then buried it under the temple to Amen. These are the powerful women that we've had. So it's more than Nyasantewa, it's more than Queen Nzinga, even though those are very black powerful women. But our concept of emancipation and independence of women and men complementary goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Emancipation?
Free Black Nation.
Emancipation?
Free African Nation.
Nation, all right. I wasn't sure.
Dr. Darkwah, one of the things that we were thinking of discussing is if we look at and consider
Increase the volume.
Hello, yeah, that's a lot. If we look at Jamaica's independence as an example of what's coming up on the 6th of August, when Jamaica was granted its independence, the wording of the letter that was issued by the British government at the time was independence in statehood with the United Kingdom. And ever since, the Queen remains the head of state in Jamaica. In Barbados, if we contrast that, they are now a republic. We know we're here in Ghana, which is a republic. They've effectively liberated themselves from that form of government. So one of the thoughts is, are we truly free as a people if we still are kind of confined to the neo-colonial, if you like, forms of government? So we may have been emancipated, we may have obtained a degree of independence, but are we truly free?
I would like to rephrase the question slightly, because I think the question assumes that if you are a republic, then you are free and truly independent, and that those who are just independent without being a republic are missing something. I'll actually like to suggest that we are all in the same situation. We are all in the same boat, because for me, one of the things that we haven't been able to do is to deal with our mental slavery. So we may have been emancipated from slavery. We are no longer shackled physically, but we are very shackled mentally. And that mental shackle we have puts us in the same boat, regardless of where in the world we are as black people. And it shows up in many, many different forms. In Akan, there's a saying, if you are going to church and you see a white man, you can just turn around and go home. You just met Jesus Christ. Right? Or if somebody wants to give you a term of endearment, the phrase is "Mibroni." And people sing it to you, people say it to you all the time, and you actually don't even think about it. You just accept it as the way it is. And in fact, if you say you take offense, you get into trouble. How can you possibly take offense at this? Right? It's showing up in the names we give our children. It's showing up in the fact that current quote-unquote middle-class Ghanaian kids, they can't speak the local languages. And they think it's something they are supposed to be proud of. Why do we have a situation like that. So it doesn't matter if we are independent and we also are a republic. If on a daily basis we spend so much time and energy consumed by things that are Western. I have a friend who's very into the Sussex squad, and I'm like, what exactly is this fascination? Is she Elizabeth or Victoria, the current one? What's her name? You can tell that I don't care, right? So I don't pay too much. The 95-year-old, what's her name? Sometimes I think she's Victoria. She's been there forever, right? But the point is, why are we in this day and age so obsessed with her and what she represents? That there are people on, I mean, when the Sussex squad people talk, they know each other actually. So I say to them, all of you are Meghan Markle's cousins, right? Because you are so obsessed with all of that. But why is that such a big deal? Because she married Harry. Who cares? Who's Harry? Like, why are we all so obsessed by this all over the world? Huh? All over the world. So it's not just those who are not republics that are tied to the British. All of us in the quote-unquote Commonwealth, we are doing the Commonwealth Games right now as we speak. What does that mean? What's the common thread amongst those countries that are in the Commonwealth Games? Should we actually be having Commonwealth Games in this day and age? Right? What does that mean? And we don't pay too much attention to that. And for me, in that respect, there is no difference between Jamaica, Barbados, Ghana. We're all in the same boat. So it's important not to make too much of what being a republic gives us. Symbolically, it might mean something. But for me, in terms of what's going on up here, nothing has changed, really. And if we don't change that, we are not going to make progress.
Thank you very much. Ntare?
Thank you very much for your well put across point, Dr. Darkwah.
Okay. Dr. Kambon, I think given your expertise in linguistics, and sometimes I think to myself, I'm learning a little bit of Tree as I go along, maybe some airway, and in learning the new language, it opens up new concepts. And you come to realize that how language itself can be a prison, because it kind of limits the sphere of your thinking. So I'm just interested in your thoughts about how language and connecting with our African languages, our mother tongues, the importance of it in terms of, if you like, emancipating ourselves from that mental slavery in a country where we are Africans, but the official language is English.
I think this is a very excellent question. And some years back, I was reading a book of Proverbs, Akan Proverbs, of course, and one of them was, so one told the Mankuma, now what to wouldn't, and it will say, now what to know, and it translates to, if you haven't met the Mankuma, or Obadele, that's the creator, but you've met your mother and your father, then you've met Mankuma. Think about this concept, and it goes back to what we were just talking about before. So you have people who can use the tree language to say some very enslaved, mentally enslaved types of things, but when you actually go and learn the language, you can actually get a concept that's much deeper than an imaginary white boy on a cloud who's just zapping things into existence, or an imaginary white boy on a stick who supposedly died for you. How can an imaginary white boy on a stick, a stinking imaginary white boy on a stick, die for anyone, right? So this is just the concept of getting out of what's termed conceptual incarceration, that in learning the language, you start to learn concepts that are vastly different from those that are built into the language that may be your first language. In my case, I grew up 7, 8 years old. I felt like that was my only language that I knew. I didn't even know a tree existed at that time. But I had the concept this English was just meaningless, that it seemed very empty. And one of the first articles I read was in terms of philosophy, and it was Nanakwame, and he was writing about how these concepts and words in English that are meaningless, that they're actually connected to real physical things in Chi. So for example, if you have the word like happy, if you're a native speaker, it's very difficult for you to break that down etymologically, where ha means something to you and p means something to you. You just get it in context that when someone's smiling, then you, all right, that must mean something, right? But in Chi, someone says, Menyachi. It actually deals with the physiological reaction of the pupils dilating when a child is happy and they receive a gift. There's actually something real that exists that you can actually relate to. If you say in English apprehensive, even if you go etymologically, it will just point you to a web of endless words. There's nothing connected to it that's real and tangible. But you say, my stomach burns me. You can actually feel that feeling when you're about to go on stage and you know what you're talking about when you say, right? So like all of these types of things. And when I read that article, I felt like this is the most profound thing. I have to learn this language, which of course I've been doing ever since. But I said, here's a language where the words themselves actually mean something. They actually point you to something. They're actually deep. There's actually a philosophy built into it. So whereas their languages are based on fundamental alienation, which is being alienated from reality, they're in a cave-like environment where they think nature is against me, therefore man versus nature, man versus God, man versus woman, man versus everything. That's their concept, as opposed to our concept, which is about complementary opposites, reciprocity, truth, balance, order, harmony, which is called Ma'at, which is represented by a female with an ostrich feather in her headband. So this is our concept, and her complement is Jehuti, which represents exact measurement, precision, writing, and mathematics. So look at that, concept, and it's built right into the languages. So where their concept is fundamental alienation, being alienated from reality, our concept is affirmation of reality. What actually exists, my body is sacred, so therefore, in my very concept of how I'm going to express this term and that term is going to invoke that body part that's affected by the emotion. So I hope you're getting just the idea of, if you're dealing with a language that's not of our own making, you're dealing with that language and it actually serves as conceptual incarceration. It's very even difficult to break out of the concepts of this is this and that is that, and we'll get stuck with, emancipation, independence, and it's like, how can we be independent when we're still dependent on them for a language, as you're mentioning, as the official language? If we're dependent on them for clothing, every time I walk around the campus of University of Ghana, I look at the billions in aid that we've given to them just for a concept of being modern, right? All they have to do is just say the one word modern, and now everything that you would have worn that would have benefited you economically, you won't wear it again, and you'll only wear the things that will benefit your enemies. So I think that the language is very key, but not just the language for the sake of the language, because as we mentioned, you can say stupid things in Chi. It's about really getting into that which affirms reality, that's in alignment with nature, that's in alignment with that which is truth and that which benefits us as Black people. And that really, when you see what cuts across, then you don't have to get stuck with, oh, well, in my village they say, if you wuhu bronia san. Well, what do they say in Kikongo? What do they say in Yoruba? What do they say in Walla? Because somewhere across the line, if we understand that we're African in the deepest sense, then we understand that in all what's lost by Fong is returned by Ga. What is forgotten by Akan is understood by Ewe. That which is enriched, that which is lost by one is enriched by Kiswahili, and all of those come together in the sense of what it truly is to be African, and that's where we start to get our conceptual independence, conceptual emancipation, and a deeper concept of who we are as Black people. Emancipation!
Thank you very much. Ntare, you have a question?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I would like to pose a question to the panel as a whole. Emancipation has been taught as part of our history, and many stories have been told. But what is the most important thing for us as the youth to know about our freedom?
Perhaps I'd say Dr. Bobson, if we can ask you that question, and then open to the panel.
I was actually hoping to piggyback on the language.
Please do.
Okay, to go back
Please
to it.
do.
So I think it's quite interesting, Dr. Kambon, that you mentioned language, because part of my research is about the language of trauma. And I'm researching on diasporans and how language is a site of trauma for them, because having been, how do I put this, denied the cultural language because they didn't grow up on the African continent. One of them says, coming to Ghana, for instance, she hears all these languages around her but doesn't understand any of the words that are being said. And to her, that's a site of pain, because the language that she does speak, which is English, she's Trinidadian. So the language which she does speak, which is English, it's actually a language of violence. It's a language of pain, because it's a language that enslaved her. So how do you grow up speaking a language that essentially tells you are not human, that you ought to be enslaved, that your very color is inferior or second class? So it's interesting to see these perspectives and take for granted for us, for instance, the way Dr. Darkwah says that a lot of middle-class people grow up in Ghana, grow up wanting to speak English and to identify as modern by speaking English at home and naming our kids English names, etc. When we have all these cultural resources at our disposal to actually even understand something like Meniaje, which we always take for granted. You just say, oh, Meniaje, but you don't actually think about it that it's actually connected to your physiological being, or Miyem Shishime. We actually think of butterflies in our stomach, and we are more comfortable seeing that as the expression of apprehension or panic, rather than thinking about it as Miyem Shishime. You can actually feel your stomach going queasy. And so it's interesting to me to hear you speak about language like that, because I've read so much about how for diasporic descendants, language is a site of trauma precisely because they don't have access to it, and how we don't actually, well, not all of us, but some of us don't actually value the importance of what we have.
So, oh yeah.
Just one point to veggie back on that one too. Veggie back. I remember a couple of years ago on the email exchange at University of Ghana, there was a guy who would always send out these anecdotes that are supposed to be, positive anecdotes. And this one was about one day a professor went into his classroom and he had, everyone pull out a sheet of white paper and then put a black dot in the middle and say, "What did you see?" And then they say, "Oh, I see the black dot. What are you talking about?" And he says, "You see, you all are focusing on what's negative. Look at all this white, but then you're focusing on the black." I could not let that email slide. I could not let that email slide because, again, in English, anytime you say something black, the idea is here's something, black cat across your path, is bad fortune. If the villain, he's going to wear a black hat and black this and so forth. So that's the concept in that language. So in my response, I said, that concept isn't universal. If you look at the Songhai language, so we talk about, Ghana, Songhai, and Mali as the classical states. Now, if you look at the Songhai language, anytime they want to say something that is powerful, they use the term bibi. And bibi is related to when we say abibimai or bibini. It's the same bibi still in Chi, but the concept isn't as deep as it is in Songhai. So if they want to say that the water is pure, they'll call it Hari Bibi. They say, "I know Hari Bibi, give me the black water." That's to say that something is pure. If they want to say that something is fertile, they'll call it Sadiza Bibi, which is the black soil. Even if the color isn't black, the only way that you can say that this soil is fertile is by calling it Sadiza Bibi. If you want to say that the sun is powerful, you'll call it Wanye Bibi. And that's the way to say that it's very strong. Now they're looking and seeing it's not the color black, but that's the concept of blackness that's built into that language. Now look at the concept of blackness that's built into English. You'll grow up, trying to put bleaching cream on yourself. You'll try to perm and do everything because the very language tells you to do that. And then if you look at Medunetra classical Kemet, the idea of Kim, this is where the word chemistry even comes from. The word Kim refers to that which is complete, that which is perfect, that which is limitless and boundless. So the ruler Seer was known as Kim Ur, the great black one. And when a person passes on, they get the title Usir and then whatever your name is. And the idea is that all of us aspire to be like the great black one. and it's something that we can only attain when we become ancestors, you understand? So just to that same point about, you know, conceptual incarceration and mental enslavement, the language itself can be, like you're saying, a site of trauma because it tells you to hate yourself. You don't know why at 3 years old you choose the white doll and you don't want to see the black doll. It's because the language is telling you to do so.
Thank you. No, come back to Ntare. Dr. Darkwah, if you can, please.
Ntare's questions are like for university level. So if I remember, you were asking what does emancipation mean for the youth, right? I will go back and touch on language again and move forward. But to say, really, what we need is for our young people to feel confident in who they are. Not wanting to be like others, right? But to be confident in who you are as a young black man, where your blackness is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be proud of. So it means work for you, because we don't give you those images in many of the spaces you find yourself in. We don't teach you in ways that affirm your blackness. One of the things that I was very interested in when I was having to do math with our kids is, in English, what does 11 mean? You count up to 10, then you now say 11. It has no relationship to 10. 12 is equally going off in its own direction. When you get to 14, 13, right, then you begin to make some connection with the 10s and the 1s. But if you take account, 11, it's Dubako, it's 10 plus 1. So if I'm trying to teach a child what the concept of 11 is, it's very simple. We've gotten up to 10, and now we add 1, and we move along. But you try it in English. What's 11? It has nothing to do with 10. It has nothing to do with 1, and you are trying to make them. And your life will be so much easier if you could just draw on their can to do that. But we as the adults haven't provided our children with these resources. So you have a challenge, Ntare, unfortunately, because you have to do for your generation and the generation to come that which we didn't do for you. But I hope that what you'll remember about today is how much we emphasize the importance of being proud of who you are as a black person, and making sure that going forward, you go forth with that pride, always, no matter what people tell you. You hear me? No matter what they tell you, every single day, you know you are a black man. Well, maybe you're not a black man exactly. You are working your way there, right? But you are a young black person who should be very proud of who they are and the ancestors that we have, and what it took for us to be here. I mean, if you think about what we've been through, not just the enslavement period, but the colonialism period, think about Black Lives Matter. It's amazing that we actually still exist, that we managed to get through all of this. We managed to raise children, we managed to fall in love and have the next generation, when really every day you are fighting literally principalities of all kinds of shapes and forms. And so hang on to that you come from a people of strength, and use that to create a different world for your generation and the generation to come. One where nothing about being black is something that makes you burdened, but that you are free. Free from all the burdens that we've left you to carry, unfortunately, and free to do whatever it is you want to do. Remember what he said about when you are free, your choices are important, right? Because if you make the wrong choices, it has implications, okay? And then forgive us for we failed you.
Thank you so much. We'd like to open the audience. If any of you have any questions that you would like to pose to the panel, please do.
Yeah, I have a question.
Perfect.
I don't need a mic. How does one's freedom relate to one's spirituality? How does freedom and spirituality connect?
So for those of you in the back, in case you didn't hear, how does one's freedom relate to one's spirituality, the connection between the two? Who would like to answer that first, please?
For me, spirituality has been very important because we've talked about mental enslavement, and for a lot of us now, black people now, we come from a long history of Christianity. Well, not long, but we've grown up within the Christian tradition or Islamic tradition. So when I think about freedom, spiritual freedom, I want to think about, for instance, who are my ancestors to me? And this is very deep for me because I didn't meet my grandmother. And I want to think about my grandparents, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, as people who intercede for me. So why don't I have a way of conceptualizing them as people who intercede for me? Why do I think, when I think about spirituality, why do I push them aside? When these are the people who know me and who raised my mother and love me. So to think about somebody who should want my good, should it not be the people from who I come from? So for me, freedom of spirituality is actually freeing myself to think about spirituality beyond what I've been taught. To think about it in terms of talking to someone who actually understands my struggles, peculiarly as a Ghanaian woman, and growing up from the kind of family that I grew up in. So that's for me is freedom from spiritual freedom.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. The connection between freedom and spirituality. Emancipation? Emancipation? Very good. So, earlier today, I was actually having a conversation in this same vein around our concept as black people of the reason why we're here on the planet. And if you look across the length and breadth of the continent throughout space and time, the concept is that we're on the planet to fulfill our destiny. In Twi, that would be Nkrabia, right? In Yoruba, it would be Ayamo or Akunleyon. You have these concepts, and basically the idea is that everyone comes here with a purpose. Everyone comes here with a mission, and it's your duty to find out what that purpose is in the course of living. There's a proverb in Chi, and it translates to one's destiny reveals itself clearly in the living of one's life. And the idea is that when we're here on earth, we're supposed to live an ethical life. We're also supposed to show good character, and in doing so, to eventually become an ancestor and assist those around us in also becoming ancestors. So this is where we're talking about freedom, the freedom to fulfill your destiny. And as long as you are under the hegemony of your enemies, you can never fulfill your destiny. There's a quote, I believe it's by Nana Walter Rodney, where he says, "For the only great men are those who fight for their freedom." Right? In a system of oppression, the only great men are the ones who fight for their freedom. So that's the best that you can do. You can't be building pyramids and writing, the first papyrus in the history of the world when someone is telling you, no, you have to do this, no, you have to do that, go, hew my wood, go fetch my water, and these types of things. So it's a different concept. Now, if you come to the religions of our enemies, they say the purpose of you being on the planet is to praise an imaginary white boy and give him money because he's always broke apparently. So every Sunday you gotta come and give him money. And if not that, you have to be submissive and pray to a rock in a desert 5 times a day. How can you possibly fulfill your destiny, fulfill your mission, when 24/7 you're walking around speaking in tongues, saying that you're praising an imaginary white boy? Right? Can you be living the ethical and moral life? Can you be showing good character when someone tells you that as soon as you accept this imaginary white boy, then all of your sins are rinsed away? This means that you could murder, you could lie, you can cheat, you can steal, but now in my deathbed, I accept the imaginary white boy. This is what Thomas Jefferson did. Enslaved over 500 black people on Monticello, but then right before his death, he said, oh, I'm born again. Now he gets a free pass. That's what that religion is all about. However, our spirituality is rather about us fulfilling our destiny by living an ethical, a moral life, having good character to eventually become an ancestor, so that the next time libations are poured, your own name is among. So it's a different concept. Emancipation?
Free Black Nation.
Emancipation?
Anything you'd like to add to that question at all?
Really, I know where your question is coming from. No, I don't. Or I think I know where your question is coming from. But I mean, I think that when you look at...
Listen, that's where our freedom begins.
Yes. But you know,
Freedom is our spirituality.
in this...
What we believe in physically and all of that. That's where freedom begins. And as long as people get that, that's where I'm coming from. As long as people get that connection, that direct connection, that is within me, not outside of me, that is where my freedom begins. So that's where I'm coming from. Okay?
But then it's a very tall order for us here.
So proceed.
Right? Because for us here, we don't make that connection at all. The ways in which we think of our relationship with a higher being is so problematic here because it's been constructed for us in very problematic ways that I'm not sure that if we understand that, we are going to be free in other ways, because really that connection is in itself oppressive, if I'm making sense, right? So if you take the ways in which, and I mean, I grew up in Ghana. I don't go to church much anymore. When I was much younger, you went like a robot on automation, right? Like that's what you do. Because if you don't, the ancestors, they are devilish. They'll be all about it. So you need, in Ghana, you need God, because without God, devils are coming after you. And the devils are your relatives. They are your ancestors. They are not good for you. And it's so deeply ingrained. I mean, we do things like pray for traveling mercies, right? Because there are people from here to where I live, they can cross my path and make their car see things, which is why we have to pray before we leave, because they are going to come and pull us in. And if you actually suggested to somebody that really, right, you are going to have a hard time, I'm not sure that with that kind of spirituality, we are going to be making much progress. And I don't know how we begin to get at that, because it's such an issue for us, and taken for granted by so many of us, that undoing it is a Herculean task. I don't like to think in pessimistic terms, but on this one, I think I give up. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a quick question. For those who are kind of being more self-aware of where you're from, I'm from America, born and raised in America. I live here in Ghana now. So I'm on this journey of self-awareness of who I am and my roots. But the reality is that the more that I become aware of self, the more disconnected I am from this world that we live in. Being disconnected from what I've known my whole life, being in corporate America or business and things like that. So how do you balance from still being on your journey of self-awareness and understanding who you are with still having to live in the reality of where we are today?
I'll try. I mean, I think for me, I think of myself as a ball of contradictions, right? That every day I make mistakes. Some of the things I say are flippant and reflect just the many years of being beaten down, and you take it for granted. At other moments during my day, I'm fully self-aware, right? And in those moments, I look back and say, now that was not very good of you, was it? But I know that it's sort of like fits and starts. I look to the next generation as where our salvation comes from. I think it's important that, and this is not just what we do with our biological children, it's what we do with the next generation. We need to give them a much stronger sense of self that is devoid of the contradiction, so that they'll be closer to where we really need to be.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Bobson.
I wanted to ask you, do you think we are doing a good job of giving the next generation the tools? Because I feel like we are not.
But you see, you can only give tools to the extent that you have them. So one of the things, I lived in the US for 10 years, and one of the things I used to say is, I'm not sure I can raise a child here, because I wasn't raised in the US. So if my child comes to me and says, this is what happened in school, I'm not sure I'm going to respond, because I've never had an experience like that. So I won't have the right answers to give that child, right? So we are really working from a place of deficit. I have a son, I'd like to think that I've done an okay job by him, right? But I'm constantly, I was just telling Aekua, he speaks Tree. He translates from English into Tree. I do the opposite. When I speak English, as I'm speaking to you, I'm doing a like 100-minute second thing of translating what I'm thinking in Tree into English. How did I end up raising a child who says, Memo, Asim, I fell asleep? Like he literally took the English words, broke it into Tree, and I almost died. But the thing is, around us, he doesn't hear that Tree. When I was growing up, you were spoken on the streets in Tree, in Ghana. So my parents are not Ghana, but I understand I speak because we had it on the streets. Now, the sugarcane seller, the coconut seller, the groundnut seller, they're all trying to speak English. Right? So if you just take it, I'm not even going to the spirituality question, because as I've told you, that one. Right? If you just take what we are doing in terms of language, we are not doing a very good job by them. In Ghana right now, when I was growing up, there were 3 books for children. Nimdiakwan, right? Who rejected that? The books don't exist anymore. So a friend had a child a week ago, and Nanado says I should send him 3 books. I said, Nanado, please, don't come and give me stress. It doesn't even exist in people's heads, let alone in a bookshop. How did we end up in a place like this? So you might be self-aware. You want to write the 3 book. You don't speak Tree. How are you going to write the 3 book? But if we make an effort, if I say I don't speak the language, but I know its importance, you speak the language, you don't appreciate its importance. But between the two of us, we are going to produce the text so that the next generation. And then in that respect, unfortunately, I'm putting a lot of burden on poor Ntare. But I feel that if we at least make them conscious of the fact that who we are is not the perfect place to be, then they know that they have a hard task ahead of them. And they also recognize that we haven't done right by them. And I think it's okay to be able to say that and admit that we haven't done right by them. And so we are more of a contradiction in terms than we should be. And we hope that they will be less of a contradiction in terms.
Thank you very much. I believe, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I feel obliged to take one more question. What does say Miriam, please?
I'm listening to Madam's talk.
Yes, I'm listening to Madam talk, and in referring to the gentleman over there who talked about spirituality. If you start comparing or making spirituality in line with Christianity, that's probably where you're getting confused. Completely different. Spirituality is your being, who you are. We were born, we were made in an image of spirit. Yes, nothing to do with Christianity. So if you're trying to make and try to understand or even try to see how spiritual you are, you have to divorce yourself from Christianity. Yes, that is first and foremost. The second thing that I want to sort of talk on is this language. I mean, it's quite interesting when Madame there talked about language as a sign of trauma. That is really quite interesting, because I think Jamaican language is probably one of the most unique language when we talk about traumatic people. Yes, we were all put together. Our ancestors were put together from different ethnic groups from different countries, and they had to find a way to communicate with each other. So that's why we will, you know, when I'm traumatized here in Ghana, I go right back to the Jamaican language, and we say, so wagwan yaso. You understand? So you have to, you know, that is your way of basically ground yourself and say, look, I need to start looking at other ways of dealing with this issue. Yes? And the only way is basically drawing back on the spirituality of you as a being, as the person who you are. Yes? And until you can do that, that's when we talk about the freedom and spirituality that my gentleman here is talking about. So don't mix spirituality and Christianity together. Then you will start understanding who you are as a person, not as a Christian person. Okay.
Thank you very much. I understand we have time for at least one more question. Before I take that question, to you, sister, to answer your question a bit further, we're at different stages in the same journey. So I think the people, the lady that just spoke, when we met, you've been in Ghana for nearly 30 years or more? 20 years, sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. But reach out to the others that are here at different stages in the journey and seek guidance, seek wisdom from your elders and pass it on to your youngers. The gentleman in the back, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to add my voice as an extension to what my, I don't know whether to say auntie, said right there. I think the whole thing is being able to identify ourselves as a people. First of all, I can't look around here and say this person is Jamaican and this person is Ghanaian or this person is Ivorian or Nigerian. I think if we look amongst ourselves at the moment, we all look African. But the thing about it is, first of all, spirituality. Are we associating spirituality with Christianity? Or are we associating spirituality with a connection to our source? Our source being whoever created us. Because if we understand source, then we understand everything. Everything in the sense that science would even say that there was a source to everything that exists. There was a Big Bang. Where did the Big Bang come from? And then at the end of the day, we find out that there was a Big Bang, there was light, there was the heavens, there was everything that came out of the Big Bang. Now at the end of the day, we can relate it back to creation. Now, if we understand this, then we begin to understand that there is a God that is one, whether it is Christianity, Islam, or traditional religion. But what has been sold to us is Christianity. Fortunately or unfortunately, we as a people here have bought into a concept called Christianity, instead of buying into a concept called the Creator or the Almighty. Now, the reason why I'm saying it is we are from a creation, but that creation, is it God, or is it Chineke, or is it Iradi, or is it Allah? We don't even know. But then again, we have also come to this point where we are communicating with each other with a language called English. Now, once we begin to communicate in English, then we are buying into a concept, and that concept is the concept of division. Do we have a language as a people? I don't think so. We are buying into that language where we speak the language of Christianity. Are we communicating in Tree? Are we communicating in Igbo? Are we communicating in Hausa? I don't know. But as a people at this age, we are sold out. Now, if I bring this thing to the area of Jamaica, can we say that in Jamaica, we would probably start teaching our children one language in Africa? So in our schools in Jamaica, can we say that compulsorily we would teach Yoruba or Tree or Hausa or any of these, languages to our children, like the boy who is there at the moment? Can he speak one African language? I don't think so. He speaks just English. But then if his parents understand that, okay, at a point in time we are going to move him to Ghana, or we are going to move him to Ivory Coast or to Nigeria, then we begin to teach him a language, so that when he goes to Ghana, he will be able to speak Tree with the rest of the children. If he goes to Nigeria, he will be able to speak Yoruba or Igbo with the children. Then we begin to own ourselves as a people. But at this moment, to be very honest, I feel like we are lost as a people. And not until we find a language that would unify us, we would always remain lost. Not until we find a religion or an identification to a God, we would always be lost as a people. Thank you.
Kambon.
Okay, thank you so much. So, in the audience is my daughter Ama, and all day today as we were driving around, and she actually has the sheets on her table there, we were reading Medu Neter. Now, what is Medu Neter? Medu Neter is the first writing system in the history of the entire planet Earth, and it was invented by black people in Kemet, the land of black people, over 5,400 years ago. Why do I bring this up? Because we're talking about how we are failing and our children aren't speaking our languages. Since my child, she's 14 years old, since she was born, I've never spoken to her in English. We speak Tree together, we speak together, we don't speak any English whatsoever. Not a single word ever in English to my daughter. Why? Because I love her. So if I hated her, I would only be speaking to her English. But this is just to the point that if we're saying that we're not teaching our children can't speak, that's not my reality. Because I made sure that growing up through my whole life, I would be getting the skills and getting the tools so that this would be a different situation. You understand? So I just wanted to give perhaps a different perspective, because like I lived in Hacho, and there were 4 families in the compound. I was the only one who would speak to my children in their own language, to the point that the child next door didn't even know the difference between Ewe and Chi. If you say Ndinao, they say, oh, I don't understand Chio. They don't even know, and that's the mother's language. But that's not the reality for everyone. Some of us are very clear, so I just wanted to add a little bit of hope to the scenario as far as that goes. To my sister back here who was talking about disengaging from the system and being independent, some of the things that arise from that. At the time of so-called emancipation, now why do I have a problem with the term emancipation? Because it's from the perspective of the colonial enslavers. Some people say colonial masters, I say colonial enemies, right? Because that's more correct and much more precise. It's saying that like they decided, oh, we're going to let you people free. Whereas that is not the reality at all. In Haiti, they whipped the British to the tune of over 10,000 British dead, and that was supposed to be the world's superpower. And then within a couple of years of them beating the British down, the British decided that they have to stop the so-called slave trade. Why? Because every single ship that came, we already whooped their behind with those who are already there. Now they're saying, we're the ones who are actually equipping these black people with another ship, another regiment, another battalion every single time. That's why they stopped the so-called trade. But then it wasn't until Samuel Sharp going into the 1830s where he decided that he was going to have an uprising. Within 1 week of that uprising finally being put down, they put together a committee on how to stop chattel enslavement altogether. This isn't emancipation, oh, they out of the heartstrings and what. They were being beaten and whipped, and they feared that this rash of fires of black people fighting for their own freedom was going to spread. So when we say emancipation, we have to be very clear on whose perspective we're dealing with this. But to bring it back to the question about the youth, and I'll close on this point, we have to start thinking about, you know, when you read some of the WPA narratives, this is in the south of the United States of a murderer, that in the WPA narratives we have these anecdotes of people who, when they were told you have your freedom, they said, well, where do I go? Now, Malcolm X would talk about the difference between the house Negro and the field Negro, where if you tell a house Negro, you know, let's run away, let's escape, let's separate, he says, what place is better than here? Where can you get better food than here? Where can you get better clothes than here? Nothing is like massa, and that's the house Negro. But then you have the field Negro who, when you tell him, let's run away, let's escape, let's separate, he says, any place is better than here, right? Now, what is that dynamic? Part of the dynamic is that being dependent and being enslaved is delicious for some people. You understand? They are made to think that it's so sweet, to the point of, I had my daughter read an article about gamification and about the dose. When I say a dose, it's like a dose of a drug, but the dose actually refers to dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And when they're putting these games together, they're doing it knowing that rather than having to bring drugs into your community, they can actually manipulate the chemicals in your own body to make you release certain endorphin when you see bright lights, when you see this flashing across the screen and so forth. So you're made to think that what is sweet, what is fun, what seems, you know, like so good, what it's doing is actually enslaving you, but you're taught to think that what is enslaving you is delicious. You understand? When we were talking earlier about the KFC, the Pizza Hut, I had somebody in my own family who said, oh, hold up, don't say anything about pizza. Pizza is just good. It's just great. It's the best food universally. But now look at this. You understand? So ever since my daughter was young, I always told her what's bitter is what is healthy for you, and then what's sweet is what's going to kill you. And we've actually seen this play out in our own family. So when we look at the dose, we have to start thinking about, can we get to the point where we stop desiring these creative tastes and desires that make us think that being on Facebook is good, being on Instagram is good? We just had Akosua, who was, you know, sacked from her office because she said that she was on a medical leave, but then she's putting up pictures of TikTok and, you know, dancing on TikTok. It means that someone has actually got on TikTok, the ones who created TikTok have got into her mind on a cellular level to rewire her brain away from her whole lawyer career, MP career, and whatever else, minister career, to say, this is what you're going to do. And then when you get the likes, when you get the followers, then it gives you that dose that you are looking for. So I would say for us, we have to get away from thinking that what they create in our mouths, the tastes and desires that make us think that enslavement is sweet, that independence is actually hard. When you say I want to be independent, it means that I don't want you to shelter me anymore. I don't want you to give me food anymore. I don't want you to protect me anymore. I want to do that for myself. Then that's a tall order when it's just me as an individual. But the concept I would like to end on is the idea of interdependence. And that's interdependence amongst us as black people. We talk about being independent, but what we end up being is really just independent from ourselves. Because, you know, the Ghanaians don't like the Nigerians because the Ghana must go. And, you know, the diasporans don't like the continental Africans, and continentals don't like. All of that is, you know, when brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits a father's estate. But if we can get to the idea of, I want to be independent from them, and that means I want to live a harder life. That's one. And then two, to make that life less hard, it's going to require interdependence. It means that I'm going to, you know, get my kwedu from Nigeria, from the Yoruba. It means that I'm going to get this from my brothers there in Mzansi, South Africa, and so forth and so on. So these are just some concepts that I want to throw out there, that your challenge as a youth would be to stop enjoying the things that enslave us. Because, I'll end with a quote by Dr. Amos Wilson. He says, oppression rests on people enjoying things and going places that destroy them and hating the things that they should be learning. Something to think about. Emancipation?
Free Black Nation.
Emancipation?
Free African Nation.
Thank you so much. a close there.
Hi, Mike. We have one quick closing statement and then we're done. Okay?
Thank you. Good evening. And here am I speaking again the English language. It's a shame. I've been here for how many years now? I should be able. And Dr. Kambon, forgive me, I beg you. African culture and traditions will all be lost in the next 500 years. We do not know our ancestors' names. We do not call our children by African names. What are we doing? We are honoring murderers and thieves by naming our children after them. We have to stop this. This is one thing that we have to do, is stop naming our children after the ancestors of rapists and murderers.
100%.
We need to name our children with indigenous names. We need to empower African people to be proud of our names, our heritage, our history. At one time, in the future, if we don't do something about this, we will become something that belongs in a museum. They will only look at, hey, there was a place called Africa, but no substance. No substance. This is something I want us to look at. If you do not name your children after their grandfather, you are killing the history of your grandfather. Thank you.
Look at your husband, look at your life.
Wow. Go ahead, Mikey. I just want to thank all of you for being here. I'm going to hand it over back to Mike and Ntare to close us off. Go ahead.
I would like to thank everybody on the panel for coming and taking time to share your insights, and everybody in the audience. I hope you found it as insightful as I have. Ntare, do you have any final words?
Yes, I do. I'd like to thank the whole panel for their time, for their presence. It's been very inspiring for me as a small boy to be in the presence of such intellect. I would also like to thank the audience for all of their contributions for all of their contributions. I need to read to the panel. And thank you all for being here tonight at Emancipation Day here at JamRock. And upon those last words, I would like to close the panel.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Kavoy? Kavoy, the message?
All right. True Mike name.
And where is the message?
Mike.
From the projector will turn there.
This one?
Greetings, everyone.
Uh-oh.
I'm here with my...
Hold on. Yeah, just wait.
Ooh, one more round of applause for our panelists, please. Before we proceed, I just want to acknowledge the Honorary Consul of Jamaica in Ghana, Mr. Isaac Osei-Bonsu, who is amongst us, who represents us very well. I also want to turn your attention to the screen over there. It's a little bit tiny, but you know, if you want to come closer, you can. If not, that's okay, you should be able to hear. We have a message from Mr. Stephen Golding, the president of the UNIA in Jamaica, for us here in Ghana, as well as his son and his daughter. So Kush and his daughter as well. So we're gonna go ahead and hear that message. Go ahead.
Greetings, everyone. I'm here with my family under our Aekua tree. Aekua is a fruit that came to Jamaica from Africa during the transatlantic slave trade. It is a fruit that populates the streets and forests of Ghana also. But it is a fruit that we did not learn to eat until our trauma and trials during the transatlantic slave trade. It has now become Jamaica's national dish. But the story of ackee mirrors the story of the African's journey in the Western Hemisphere and in the Caribbean. Ackee was known to be poisonous, but during our struggles on the plantation, we learned to cook it, to cultivate it, and to mix it with the saltfish that they put in the fields as fertilizer for the sugarcane. Now, it is synonymous and symbolic of Jamaica. When we consider Emancipation Day, I want to tell you the real story of the liberation of Africans in the Caribbean. Our struggle and our fight began in Africa. We fought on the continent. We fought in the ports. We fought on the ships. We fought on the plantations and we fought in the hills. I wear camouflage today instead of the usual bandana colors considered to be the national dress of my country, because it was the Maroons, the fighting Maroons of the West Indies, who covered themselves with the trees and the leaves and the bushes as they fought the British who wore their red coats to track them, to kill them in the mountainous regions of Jamaica. The Maroons of Jamaica were not the first. We must also consider people like Benkos Bioho, like Ganga Zumba, like Zumbi in Brazil, like Makanda and Padre John in Haiti, like King Chatoué and the Black Caribs in St. Vincent. All proof positive that the African never stopped fighting for his liberation during the 400 years of slavery. That fight must continue today as we consider the topic of reparations. In every war that is fought, it is not complete until the victor and the loser sit down and discuss reparations. And that is why the 21st century is considered the century for reparation, as it is our duty to complete this fight and this struggle that was started by our ancestors so many hundred years ago. So on this Emancipation Day, as we reflect, think not of the William Wilberforces and the Granville Sharps or even the British Parliament who claim that out of their humanity, they gave us emancipation. That emancipation was won by the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors who never stopped fighting. From Kodjo to Achampong to Kwabo to Nana of the Maroons, many of them descendants of Africans who were enslaved and trafficked from what is now known as the Republic of Ghana. We must also mention Chief Tachi, who led one of the largest revolts. All of this cumulatively led to the liberation of our people in 1834. And it wasn't only in the fields and the mountains that we fought. We fought in the halls of the Parliament with people like Oluwada Equiano, Kotoba Kowano, Ignacio Sancho, and others. This is our story, not the story of emancipation given to us, but the story of our fight for liberation that continues till today. And so we make the final call of reparations now. I want to big up the people at JamRock and the many Jamaicans and other Africans from the West who have repatriated to Africa. In the spirit of Marcus Garvey and the call of Garveyism of Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad, I encourage you to continue to build empires that stretch across the seas to connect the children of Africa with their motherland once again. Kudos to you, because you are part of the struggle that continues. And repatriation to Africa is part of the reparation that we continue to seek. As Marcus Garvey said, liberate the minds of men and ultimately you will liberate their bodies. When we reflect on emancipation, let us meditate on liberation. From my family to yours, on this Emancipation Day, we say,
Happy Emancipation Day.
From Jamaica
to Ghana
to
the world.
Blessed love.
Blessed love. Just want to thank the Goldings for being a part of this presentation, even all the way from Jamaica. I know they're here with us in spirit, so thank you to Mr. Stephen Golding, to his lovely wife Empress, to Kush the Lion, and Zipporah. I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Mr. Neville Buchanan now, who's going to lead us in a tribute. Thank you.
Yeah, let me say greetings to everyone, brothers and sisters, honored guests. I first came to Ghana in 1999, and I joined the Ghana Caribbean Association. My name is, as the lady suggests, my name is Neville Buchanan, otherwise known as German Malacot, and I am the president, the current president of the Ghana Caribbean Association. So when I joined the Ghana Caribbean Association way back in 1999, when I first came to Ghana, the president at the time was a Mrs. Maisie Megan Howe. Maisie was a very popular individual in our community. I think it's fair to say that she was more or less our honorary consulate until the official honorary council was appointed. She helped many people, especially in the Jamaican community, to sort out their passport difficulties, their immigration difficulties. She had contacts in Abuja, Nigeria, where the Jamaican embassy is. She was also involved in various community activities, various organizations. She was involved in the National Trust. She was an entrepreneur. She was involved in countless. She was also instrumental in inviting groups, organizing tours for people from the Caribbean who wanted to come to Ghana just to see and to have a look and decide whether there is somewhere they wanted to invest in, and so on and so forth. So she was multitask, multi-talented, and we all loved her. We all loved her. And it was a great shock to all of us when last year in July, she sadly passed away. I mean, it's still hard to believe, because we are here gathered celebrating Emancipation Day leading up to Independence Day, and I'm looking around expecting to see Maisie somewhere, and she it's incredible. I can't believe it. So I've been asked to unveil a portrait in remembrance of her from JamRock Elizabeth, in honor of her and her memory. This is the great Maisie Howe, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it's gonna be on the wall where she'll join our other heroes. She was definitely a hero to us. She was a local hero to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mrs. Maisie Megan Howe, former president of the Ghana Caribbean Association, and a friend to us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to hand over the mic. Yes, panelists, you can feel free to have a seat. Thank you so much again. I'm going to hand the mic over to our lovely consul. He's surprised. So you can say a little quick thing for us, if you're okay with that. I'll put you on the spot.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And it's been a wonderful evening. Thank you all for coming. There's been a lot of food for thought for this evening to try to decipher between what is independent, who is independent, what does emancipation mean. But for me, what it does really resonate is that out of all this should be leadership. We should lead. We have come out of emancipation now. We are supposed to be independent. What we should learn is that we need to lead and not to be led. I hope that in the coming years, our children, like the wonderful boy Ntare, would lead. And once again, Africa would become the beacon of the world as it was many years ago. Enjoy Emancipation Week, and I am sure I will be seeing you a lot in the next few days. Thank you very much. Once again, good evening.
Thank you, Consul. So we're heading into our Nyabinghi segment, and I heard that Mr. Atro, you're going to give us a little bit of background on what exactly Nyabinghi is and how it works.
Yes. Yeah, greetings everyone. I would like to say that for I and I Rastafari, when it comes to the issue of emancipation, we do not see it the way the Jamaican government see this issue of emancipation. As far as we are concerned, is that we still burn fire upon the Jamaican government. We still burn fire on the government of Ghana, who do not recognize the need for Pan-Africanism to take the lead. We burn fire on the government for taking us into the IMF when there are alternatives and a lot of resources here in Ghana that the government can look to move the country forward. The same thing with Jamaica. The Jamaican government have been tying the people of Jamaica to the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the United States of America, and England. Tonight, we are going to do a Nyabinghi chant. And the Nyabinghi chant, which means death to black and white oppressor. We are not partial whether you're a black man and you, it's not in the interest of Africans. We'll burn fire in the same way like we burn fire in the white man. We're not partial where that is concerned. The issue of the Nyabinghi, Rastafari have embraced the Nyabinghi as part of our weapon over the years. It is not for entertainment. Recently, the Jamaican government allowed the Queen of England or the Prince or Princess, whoever they were, to go to Jamaica, and the Rastas in Jamaica, which had burned fire on the Rastas in Jamaica today, for playing Nyabinghi for the Queen of England. How come Rastafari in this time can get up and sit down with the drums that's supposed to be the drums against the enemies? They get up and play drums like it's entertainment for the Queen of England. Is Rastafari and Jamaica going backward or going forward? So tonight, we are saying that the Nyabinghi drums that are here tonight must burn fire on black and white oppressors, including the Queen, the politicians in Africa who is selling out Africa. And that's what Nyabinghi is about. Nyabinghi is about fighting oppression, beating down oppression. We have seen what reggae music have done over the years. And it's mainly through the spirit of the Pan-Africanists over the generations who are still in Jamaica fighting for the liberation of Jamaica. So we are saying right now that It's time for Jamaicans here in Ghana to stop look to this so-called emancipation that they have in Jamaica and recognize that we have to turn a new leaf. We have repatriated for a reason, and that reason is to take Africa forward, not to take Africa backward. We cannot follow the lead of Jamaica where this emancipation thing is concerned. So we look forward to next year that emancipation must take a different turn. It must take a political, economic, and social turn that make a difference. You cannot talk about your independent and you're emancipated when you don't control your own currency. As Bridget said, you don't control your own language, you don't control your culture, you don't control your resources in particular. So how can you talk about emancipation? Look at what is happening in the world today where this issue of Russia and Ukraine and the whole NATO people are fighting. Yesterday we are talking about we having a problem with food. How come Africa have a problem with food? All because we are depending on those countries to feed us. And now is an opportunity for Africa to monopolize this situation, this war that's going on in Africa, in Europe, to our own benefit. We need to be able to maneuver between these two forces that are fighting and look for the best interest of Africa. I'd just like to finally say right now that the Nyabinghi will continue as a chant and as a system of death to black and white oppressor. We are not going to sell out Nyabinghi, neither to no reggae musicians, nor to any politicians. Rastafari.
All right. When you're ready to burn down Babylon? It's Nyabinghi time. So I'm going to shift your attention over to the drums. They're over here. All right. We're looking for Jabi as well. You ready, gentlemen? We're waiting on Jabi. The biggest. The Bingi. Guys, you can go ahead and warm up your vocal cords. Because we're gonna be singing. Hi. Okay. We're waiting on one person. We're going to request the cultural drummers to just give us a little interlude, warm us up mentally. Thank you.
I
Babylon now. Serious business.
Yeah! Rastafari, Haile Selassie the first. Nyabinghi. Heartbeat. Heartbeat. Nyabinghi. 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 First it was water, Nyabinghi. Jaja coming with a burning fire. First it was water, Jaja coming with a burning fire. Every man gonna get his pay according to the works he has done. He gonna be fire, hotter fire, Nyabinghi fire. Heartbeat. He gonna be fire, hotter fire, Nyabinghi fire. Every man gonna get his pay according to the work he has done. It's gonna be fire, hotter fire, Nyabinghi fire. Every man gonna get his pay according to the work he has done. He gonna be fire, hotter fire, Nyabinghi fire. Is your Rastamana get weary? Nyabinghi never get weary. Though we walk in a valley for a very long time, I never get weary. It is a new name, Yahweh, terrible amongst men, hidden on long journey. It is a new name, Yahweh is terrible amongst men, hidden on long journey. We call it Rastafari, much other we can tremble, hidden on love journey. When we call it Rastafari, much other we can tremble, hidden on love journey. Congo Farah is a new name. New name, Jah Rastafari. Jah is terrible amongst men. New name, precious name. New name, Jah Rastafari. For the conquering lion shall break every chain. For the conquering lion shall break every chain. The conquering lion For the iron never yet see this fire to this Babylon was good down. For the iron yes, see this fire to this Babylon was good down. Mina bow, feed God of the hidden, mina bow, feed God of the dead, mina bow. Nyabinghi, Jaja Lumina bow, feed God of the hidden, bow, feed God of the hidden, mina Mina bow to the God of the hidden. Mina bow to the God of the hidden. Mina bow. So it was long time ago. Bingi Shadrach, Meshach, and Babylon put them in the fire and they never got spent. Minaba, be the God of the hidden. Minaba, Jajanu Minaba, to the God of the hidden. Minaba, to the God of the hidden. Nyabinghi. So you feel the voice of the Rastaman say, Nyabinghi, Babylon, your tune gone down, down, down. Babylon, your tune gone down. So you feel the voice of the Rastaman say, Babylon, your throne gone down, down, down. Babylon, your throne gone down. Fly away home to Zion, fly away home. Nyabinghi, Binghi yard away home to Africa, yard away home. Binghi mansions one bright morning. For the wicked carried us away, captivity required from us a song. Nyabinghi warriors, how can we sing Rastafari song in a strange land? By the rivers of Babylon, where we stand down, and there we wait, when we remember Zion. By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, and there we wait, when we remember Zion. For the wicked carried us away, captivity required from us a song. Nyabinghi warriors, how can we sing Rastafari song in a strange land? So let the words of our mouth and the meditation let it be acceptable in your sight, O Farah. So let the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart let it be acceptable in your sight, O Farah. Nyabinghi, Nyabinghi, Congo man of fire, man of fire, man, fire, man of fire, Congo man of fire, man of fire, Congo man of fire, man of fire, 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 man of are the black woman of fire, oh man of fire, black man of fire, man of fire, Congo man of fire, man of fire, born oppression, fire, man of born slavery, fire, man of are the Congo man of fire, man of fire, man, fire, man of fire, 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 man of are the Congo man of fire, man of fire, man, fire, man of fire, man, fire, man of fire, man, fire, Why you trouble? Nyabinghi. Congo man a fireman, oh fireman, fireman, oh fire, 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 fireman, oh fireman. Nyabinghi. Why do you trouble, black man, King Babylon? Why do you trouble, black man, King Nyabinghi? Why do you trouble, black man, King Babylon? Why do you trouble, black man, King? It a go cause a revolution when you trouble black man king. It a go cause a revolution when you trouble black man king. Why do you trouble black man king Babylon? Why do you trouble black man king? Why do you trouble black man king Babylon? Why do you trouble black man king? It a go cause a Magadian when you trouble black man king. It a go cause a revolution when you trouble black man king. It a go cause a revolution when you trouble black man king. I am proud to be black. Nyabinghi. I am an Ethiopian. And I proud to be black. Blacker than coal, I am an Ethiopian. Moses and Aaron, King Solomon and Sheba too. And I'm proud to be black, blacker than coal, I am an Ethiopian. We Africans have a glorious history, for we built the first university in Sankore. Imhotep, the father of medicine, he was an African. I like to be black, blacker than coal, I am an Ethiopian. And I'm proud to be black, blacker than coal, I am an Ethiopian. Moses and Aaron, King Solomon and Sheba too. I am proud to be black, blacker than coal, I am Ethiopia. We Africans have a glorious history. For we built the first university in Sankore. He was the father of medicine. He was an African. And I'm proud to be black, blacker than coal. I am an Ethiopian. Nyabinghi. Mount Zion, oh, for us. Hula Mount Zion, oh, for us. Mount Zion, oh, for us. Hula Mount Zion, oh, for us. Mount Zion, oh, for us. Hula Mount Zion, oh, for us. For I and Mount Zion, oh, for us. Hula, hula, oh, hula, Mount Zion, oh, for us. Aye, aye. Rastafari.
Rastafari. Rastafari.
Wow. Thank you. I feel ready for the rest of the week. Hope the rest of you are ready for the rest of the week. I want to thank the Nyabinghi drummers for energizing us and just being here. It was lovely. Thank you so much. Give thanks. Oh, sorry, Fernando.
You know the Asian Nyabinghi order, they didn't want me to preserve it. And the bass drum, the thunder, we make the thunder in the Caribbean from the wine drum. You understand? Because they used to bring in we went there and plant sugar cane, and in the planting the sugar cane, they would store it in the drum. And we cut the drum like this and make the bass drum. And then, but they didn't want me to play music, no type of music, drums from Africa. But we as a Rastafari movement originate these sounds through the same drums and the wine barrel and the other drums from some we used to make it from coconut tree, Kube. And we learned to chant to destroy Babylon because they didn't want me to preserve nothing from Africa. But we was able to maintain the Nyabinghi. We know the African music is very social and community, but we, in that Western hemisphere, we had to have something to destroy the Queen and the Pope. That's what the Nyabinghi order is really about. It's a mystical order, and this music stems the reggae. Bob Marley, all these people that you see him playing reggae, they come to the Nyabinghi order. This is that more spiritual order that we try to preserve. So give thanks for everyone who come there and soak up some of the Nyabinghi, you know? Because people only think Rasta is reggae. You know what I mean? On stage and dancing and, you know, doing the thing, get some woman and shake and thing, but it's a different order. Let's respect it. Let's.
More fire! More fire!
All right, to the ones and ones who are still here with us, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I want to say thank you to JamRock, first and foremost, for hosting us for this illustrious occasion. So thank you so much, JamRock, for having us here. Thank you for being here, Neville, the Ghana Caribbean Association. Thank you guys for being present, to our wonderful panelists, To everyone who partook tonight, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Big up our interns. To see Millicent is still here. Locke is still here. Thank you guys. All right, so this celebration is a week long. Tomorrow we will be having all you can meat. Okay? As much meat as you want. So don't eat for the rest of the day. Just come prepared to eat. The Rasta said, nah, come now. That's okay. We have seafood and ital food as well. All you can ital as well. All you can veggie as well. You know? So come through and support. That's Tuesday. On Wednesday, we'll be having a fashion show, Fashion, Wine and Sacks. It will be the launch of the one and only Kevoy Burton's fashion line, Calvin. So come out and see one of the first Jamaican Ghanaian fashion lines ever. It's gonna be great. On Thursday, it's games night in the night. On Friday, live reggae as usual. We have some special guest artists. You don't want to miss it. Episode is gonna be there on Friday night. On Saturday, we are gonna have a bunch of things. So Independence Market, we're gonna have some live music as well. And in the night, we're gonna party. Okay, so come on out. Sunday, oh, Eric Donaldson, how could I forget? Saturday, you guys know that song? Oh, cheerio, baby. Yes, he's gonna be present here in Ghana on Saturday. We have the privilege of having him there. And then on Sunday, it's our final day of the Emancipation Week, August the 7th. We're gonna be having a dancehall dance class. So you can come and work off the all you can meet, all you can ital, Zimi. And then we're gonna have a movie night. So vibes all week long. I want to also big up the Ghana Caribbean Association. They're having an event in conjunction with the consulate on the 6th, Independence Day. So if you want some more information, you can look out for that. You want to give them some quick info? Or you prepared?
Yes, the consulate is having a celebration on the 6th of August, which is Saturday, Jamaica 60th, and it starts at 3 o'clock, and it's at the Alcove in East Legon. We start at 3 o'clock, so please be there. It's only for 2 hours, 3 till 5, so try and be there on time. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to have the Nyabinghi, we're going to have the Rastafari Council, we've got 12 tribe, we've got a lot of people in 2 hours, so please don't miss it. It's wonderful. Thank you.
We will be there, we will be there. Jamaica's turning 60 this year. It's a special year for us. So thank you once again to everybody for coming out. Big up Ntare and Mike. Big up our panelists once again. Everybody was awesome. I'll see you tomorrow. All right? Don't forget, don't eat. And don't wear no tight up, nothing. You understand? Just come relaxed and ready. So I'll see you tomorrow. One love, everybody. Happy Emancipation Day. Drummers, you want to take us out?
No drums.
They're holding a meeting.
No drums.
Hey, they're ready, they're ready. Big up the drummers.
Hey!
How would I say it in Yoruba? Shale. Ah, I got it.
Take care.